please join me in giving a big round of applause to Suzaan Sauerman.
Thanks. Thanks, Nick, and welcome, everybody. I can see there's still a few people coming in. Before I begin, I just wanted to get an idea of the audience who's in front of me here. So if you're an entrepreneur, put your hand up. Okay. If you're from a corporate environment, put your hand up. And the rest of you, just shout out if anybody's missing. Anyone else? Creative agencies, media? Yeah? Okay. So it just gives me a bit of an idea as well what to focus on, you know. But it looks like most of you are entrepreneurs and startups. So thanks for the welcome, Nick. My name's Suzaan, and as you can hear from my surname, I look very Danish. Danes always think I'm a Dane, but I'm not. I'm a mixture of African, British, and yeah, a little bit of German and French in the middle of all of that. I've spent 18 years in technology myself. We're working with different brands. I started my career within the cellular networks when they were still heroes with T-Mobile. And then I worked for Motorola for 9 years. And I'm hoping there's some people in the audience that remember Motorola. They actually invented the mobile phone. And they were very famous for the Razr. They lost it to Nokia. Nokia lost it to Apple. And here we are in 2018. So after 18 years in tech, in April last year, and after spending a year and a half in San Francisco, predominantly being based and working there, I decided to move back to Copenhagen. And this links me really into my presentation, what hooks people. What hooked me to move back here and start a consultancy in technology and what I call lifestyle technology is really a very good friend of mine who's an architect showed me the exposition that architect and design is based on in Denmark. And it's all about building and designing for human purpose. And that's something that was told to me in 2011, the first time I actually came to Denmark. And it just stuck in my head. So I can't think of a better place to be based, even though a lot of people would say to me, being based here, it's so small, this market, but I mean, you can go global from this market. So, you know, I thought it would just be good for you to understand also why I chose Denmark, not being a Dane and, you know, also having lived all over the world, to put myself in, because I think it's a perfect space when I feel so passionate about people. This is a very provocative statement. People don't give a shit about the technology. Pardon my London. I have to say, this is so true. And we see it all the time. We see it, and that's also one of the main reasons why we have so many graveyards of tech out there, what I call real useless tech. From time to time, I have some brands. I'm not a product reviewer, but brands sometimes send me products to review and to integrate into my life, and then I basically give them feedback. I don't always have time to do this myself because I get too many products, and then I give a few to friends. The first reaction I get when I put the product in front of them is, what does it do for me? So it's not, how does it work? It's, what does it actually do for me? Nobody really cares about the technology. But one of the reasons we are actually facing this is because in 1933, this was the science, and this is where we started from. This was the basis that was set when people started predicting, looking to the 60s and looking to the year 2000 when the world was supposed to end. And if it didn't end, then they were actually predicting what products we would be using in the year 2000. So science finds, industry applies, man conforms. I think you can all agree with me that's a very technology-centered focus, and there's nothing human within that. If you look at predictions over the years, if you look at people predicting in the 60s to 2000s, what you will find is there's always this view of what products will we use. There's never a view of what will people be like, what will humans be like. So if you think about in 2007 when the iPhone was launched, here we are in 2018, now we have people who are addicted to screen time. It's becoming a medical issue. Finding your partner your love of your life is actually now by swiping left and right. Never talked about that, but we only talked about touch screens and phones. So when I look at Obama here, I have to say, it's true. It's starting to catch up with us. So no wonder this doesn't work for us anymore. Sorry, I just need to find the source. It's a little bit hidden over there. What I've done based on this, I've basically taken the whole people get hooked, and I wanted to just share with you what are the key elements that drives human behavior these days. Oops. So first one, sense of community. We all want to belong to a tribe, and I guess, we can also say the more connected we are these days, the more alone we've become. It's a study and people are talking about it all the time in technology. We're so connected, but I hear all the time, but I'm so alone. Which is quite crazy. So what we do, we tend to find tribes or communities to belong to. Hence, with apps, specifically fitness apps, apps where we can compete with our friends, apps where we feel like we belong to a group, that is really increasing. That's really becoming a big part of our lives. Lifestyle aspirations. Lifestyle aspirations is not only for the rich anymore. When you had the money, you could do whatever you wanted to do in the world. It's easy for any of us now, with our skills, creative skills, to go online, to become an influencer, to focus on a specific product. If you work really hard, you can really create that aspiration. Authenticism, keeping it real. Last night I was actually reading about Nike. They've just decided to change their logo to, if you have a body, you are an athlete. So that's basically keeping it real and bringing everybody on the journey for getting fit. Solving their problems, and I would also say frustrations. And to me, this is something, specifically in the tech where I've been based, which is mostly fitness, wearable and hearable technology. But I have to say, more and more, I also ask myself, some of the products that I'm using, are they fixing my problems, or are they just confirming you've slept badly, you didn't do enough steps yesterday? It's kind of confirming that, and then what? What do I do now? How can it help me to basically guide me to create a better day for myself? Living longer. This is something we're all aware of. We're living much longer than before. We're much more aware of what we eat, what we put inside our bodies, how we take care of ourselves, which means we want to count our steps. Oops. Health awareness. It's all about sleep tracking, meditation. It's all about calming down. It's about finding out, because we actually know that we have to take care of these elements. And staying connected. As I said before, if you don't have your phone with you, you're kind of lost. The phone is the main driver these days for all of us. We do every single thing. I have a friend of mine, he told me the other day, he's got a big hotel business, and he says, I drive my whole business, and this is across Cape Town, he drives his whole business from his mobile phone. And he said to me, I'm lost basically if I lose any type of connection. So based on all of this, oops, I'm not sure why that is happening, but okay. It's just a glitch, I'm not sure. So people purpose, I basically translated what you saw earlier to people purpose, technology conforms, which for me is something which I read a lot of books from Don Norman. I don't know if any of you have read his books. He's all about how to make things smarter, and this is specifically in tech. If you haven't read his stuff, you should, because it's quite interesting. Specifically, if you're an entrepreneur and in startup, he gives a lot of creative ways of how you can work with a very small team and how you can really focus on the user more that you're creating a product or an app or a service for. This is a small framework that I use and that I have been using the last 2.5 years, developing portfolio products for various brands. And what I focus on here, you can see the people. There's a reason why the circle is so big. Then there's experience. So what is the experience you're creating? and then the technology behind that. And I use this when I go into a meeting specifically with engineers, coders, also the software engineers, the designers. And these days, I would say the role between and this is also controversial, so some of you might smile about this, the role between marketing and the product, and I know in smaller startups or in smaller organizations, that those people can be one person. And actually, in fact, in corporate world, it should be too. Because this is how we are defined. Marketing and product, they can't sit separately anymore. To me, the CMO and CPO roles are merging. So I usually use this framework, get everybody in a room, and then I work in the power of 3 and the power of 4s. I always believe that also when I present, you'll see it's very clean, it's very simple, because I want you to leave with a message here today. And ideally with people don't give a shit about the technology, okay? But also this is very easy to remember, the 4 key elements. Oops. Okay? Obsess about the user. So I'm going to tell a few stories with each of these headlines. You cannot obsess. This is where you should start your process. Whether you're making physical hardware, whether you're making an app or service or aggregator, whatever you are working on at the moment. Think about, put the user first. And this is also a very awkward discussion, actually, in many ways. Because you get the engineers in, you get the software developers in, you get the product team, you get the designers in. And what happens is the tech discussion starts, and the designers, everybody look at the designer and say, you're going to make it pretty at the end, right? So, I mean, this happens, and believe me, this happens in a lot of corporates, in a lot of big companies too. That process is like that. And we somehow then we don't think about the user, and then we make a product that is not quite optimal, but hey, we're going to launch it because it's taken us so many months to create. To give you just a little bit of an example here, when I worked for GN Netcom, and we developed a sport range, a running product, where we put the heart rate in the ears of a runner, we were kind of debating what should be the key features that we focus on. And this was before, we knew we wanted to put heart rate in there, but we had a list of 18 different other sensors and other biometrics we could have measured. Starting the conversation about what is it that runners really want to use, that actually changed us back to having 3 features in the product. Because what happened is, every time you add a feature to a product, the cost goes up. The cost to the user goes up. And all of a sudden, the product becomes expensive, doesn't really have a story, you don't have a strong brand, you end up in a situation where, okay, but we'll wait for the next generation, then we'll do a bigger splash on marketing. And let's blame marketing because we're not doing any sales. So, to me, really break that process, rip it apart and just say, okay, we start with the user, let's talk about a runner, let's talk about a runner for a week if we have to. And really figure out and get it right from the beginning, because this is not difficult. It's an awkward discussion, I'm not going to lie. The first time you do it, and the engineers hate me always. I'm the punk, and I'm this, and I'm that. But that's fine. But eventually, they fall in love with the process, specifically when we then launch a product or launch an app or service that is actually usable for users. Go on people safaris. Now, me with my African background, I always go back to Africa sometimes when I have to solve hard problems and when I have to think of creative ways of doing things. And going on people safaris is something that I do every single day of my life. And what is a people safari? It's basically where you go out, get away from your desk, get away from the small room. I know sometimes when you're just in the startup phase as well, and when you're an entrepreneur, it is hard because every hour counts. But this is such an important part, not just to look at a screen with insights, but also to take that data and go to spaces where people are using either similar services or products or apps that you are creating. And go watch how people behave with technology. And this is really just sitting down and watching people, walking around. The company I worked for previously, we were really considering what should we do around headphones. And we were thinking about every time people take their headphones off from here or from here, it's this awkward, some people wear it here, but a lot of people have this awkward moment. So we were trying to solve, by watching commuters, by watching people on planes, by watching people in cities, sitting in coffee shops, what can we create that's easier? And should a headphone really be that shape? So it was a really interesting discussion, and I can't tell you much more because I'm still a little bit under NDA there, but it was interesting to see where we led to and where the discussion went to. And we didn't talk about tech at all. Create an experience for now and the future. This is really, really important when you think about experience creation, because you might have an app or a product or a service that you're creating, thinking about how you connect yourself within ecosystems, thinking about the whole journey, the full journey for the user, and how you can delight them, how you can interact with them along the way, how you can create the small tribals, sort of tribes. And you don't do all of this alone, and this is a point I'll get to after this. But create that overall experience, because that's what people want to buy into. They buy into experiences more and more. And I always say for now and the future, this is really important. I think it's important when you specifically are in startup mode and also just beginning. Think about, who am I in 3 years? That's always the question I ask. Who am I in 3 years from now? Who do I want to be? And where are we now? And actually, then do this little exercise, where you just take yourself on this journey. For some people, it's a 5-year journey because they already have that vision. But just that question is so important. You can, and I remember all through my marketing career, I always ask the question to big CEOs, who do we want to be in 3 years and who do we want to be in 5 years? Because, if you can't answer that, then I think, it's really difficult to even create products or to create experiences. And the last one is all about collaborate and partner up. Again, for me, I feel, and the reason I've got Supreme there, I hope everybody in the room knows Supreme. It's actually a skateboard brand. And they started, just with skateboard fashion, but they've actually managed to go into high-end fashion. They've managed to go into tech. And what is interesting here, it just feels like it's a bunch of kids and a young brand where skateboarders were hanging out all the time. But all of a sudden, they got credibility to be very, very high-end fashion, and now also within the tech setup. So, it just goes to show collaboration is so strong. I'll give another example. When we were actually creating the runner headphone and with the heart rate and for gyms, one of the discussions we were having is right in the beginning is, but our brand, we don't really have the credibility. We don't have the permission to be in the sport tech area. And everybody looked at each other and said, well, yeah, that's a good point, actually. We don't. We have no cred there at all. So what we did, we looked at two spaces. We looked at credibility and community. So firstly, credibility. At that stage, and then you might look at me and say, yes, I'm an entrepreneur, don't have the budgets. But we didn't have the budgets either. So what we did, we actually went to the World Triathlon Series. Because triathlon is still a sport where you don't have to pay the athletes thousands and thousands of money. A lot of these athletes actually think it's fun to work with tech companies. So again, it's just finding those small niche areas, linking ourselves to the World Triathlon Series and two athletes, inviting them in to the process of creation of the products, actually gave us all of a sudden credibility, because we had somewhere to attach ourselves. The community part, and this was in 2013 and 2014, really came from linking ourselves to, at that point in time, all the fitness apps that everybody was using, Strava, Endomondo, and really creating communities and getting our product set within those communities and getting them to use it and getting them to add their heart rate within those apps. So, all of a sudden we had a situation where we were creating awareness for the product, not being a brand with any permission to play in sports tech, but we got the credibility and we created a community that really followed us. So just to summarize, people purpose design approach. This is what I do. I basically break the structure that we have today. The overall, where we start with the discussion about we have the technology, we've invested in the technology, and this is what it has to be. No, that's not the case. We should never start there, because I always say to people, the technology will always be there. And we shouldn't worry about, what we have today and what we don't have in 6 months, because there's other people who's also working on technology, making things smaller or making things larger, making things faster. And that's not what we have to spend our time on. When we're actually physically creating products, what is key is to really obsess about the user. So with that, thank you for listening. Here's my contact details if you want to get in touch with me. And I wanted to ask, I said to Nick it would be quite fun if anybody had questions, because I really wanted this to be an interactive session. So I don't know if there's questions from the system.
Sometimes people don't care about the technology. When the technology doesn't do what you want it to do, we care about it rather a lot. How are we looking? You don't have any questions? Is it that early in the morning? Did we not have any coffee? Somebody out there has a question. No, really. Are we that scared? Good. All right, so we've got a gentleman here and we've got a gentleman there. Yes, you first.
Hi.
Your question.
How important do you think hearables are in the future?
What's up, pardon? I can't
How
hear you.
important do you think hearables are in the future?
Hearables. Oh, that's one of my favorite subjects. But I wasn't asked to speak about that. I think hearables is an amazing, it's an amazing intervention into headphones. And to me, I'll tell you guys a story in here. About, I would say 3 years ago, how many minutes do I have? It's a short story, but hearables is really, really important to me, because if you think, when I was at GN Store North, we had GN Resound and Jabra within the same company. One of the things we were saying, if you can put heart rate in a running headphone, you could definitely put heart rate into a hearing aid. And the average person wanting a hearing aid probably really wants to have their heart rate. And equally, in the moment of hearing, in the moment where you really want to hear, whether you're running, you're listening to music, whether you're on a train, you're doing podcasting, whether you're sitting at home and you really want to cocoon in, moment of hearing, that's where we should be able to help you to hear better. And all of us, this is a fact, by 25, our hearing is damaged to a certain extent. So actually, by doing this, it's a quick equalization of hearing, and then in the moment of hearing, your hearing gets fixed. So hearables to me is really, an amazing intervention into what we know as headphones. It should be in the moment of hearing, and I'm absolutely sure, it's the time that we're kicking off with more biometrics. I mean, the sad reality is all the big brands that should have done it and could have done it. Apple is coming with the AirPods, and I think with the new ones, the biometrics, they're really going to prove to the world, that there is much, much more to put in the ear. And then I believe there's going to be health tech companies, entering that space. I think it's super exciting. The ear is very stable. You don't sweat very much here. And you can basically take any biometrics from here. So, yeah.
Cool.
Good question.
All right, we're out of time, yeah? Yeah, exactly. All right, so, one super quick then. Yeah, let's take this, but this one is a short one, just so we don't. How would the phones
You don't get trapped in what?
All right, so how to design for tomorrow instead of today.
Okay, so, I mean, again, for me, again, this comes back to if you only focus on technology, if you only focus on what you have now, and in the tech world, what we tend to do, we tend to focus on the now, and we tend to think back always, but this is how it worked in the previous design, or this is how it worked previously, or this is how a competitive app works. I always say, in technology, if you want to move forward, one of the other industries we should look at, and don't shoot me for saying this, is fashion. Because what fashion does very well, fashion looks forward, but they also look back. So they combine, they're constantly bringing stuff back in a different format, but they're also looking into the future and inventing. So, you know, to me, that industry, technology can learn a lot from the fashion industry. Also, you know, again, coming back to the whole focusing on your user, we're changing all the time. If you look at how our behavior has changed, you know, I mean, now the most common place to find some date is on your phone by swiping left or right. It is pretty scary for me when I think about that, but this is a fact. So if you just watch human nature and how we move forward, and if you kind of obsess about your user, a lot of the answers will come. And just keep that process going. Don't do it once. Do it every day. Do it all the time. Make a room where you put users all over the room. I've actually done this in all the companies I've been in. You put users on the walls, pictures of them, and you talk about them all the time. And you talk about their behaviors and what they're doing. And then your service, your app, your product, whatever you're using, will become much more clear every day you talk. Your answers will come. It's just a process. So.
Super. Suzanne,
thank you
very
so much.
Big round of applause, please.
Nick.
You were good. Thank you.